it's time. So, yeah, you're up, Jason, I guess, to talk a little about what's new in Sitecore 10.
I'll
Yay.
grab all here, and
Yes.
I mean, hopefully everybody is kind of familiar with the very, very basics of what's happened. And I've released a bunch of blogs, and a whole bunch of community articles are out there, and I've got a video up on YouTube on stuff. So really, I think for me, what the most valuable things that's going to happen here at the meetup is the discussion part. So while we've got 5 minutes, I'm going to see if I can kind of go through the highlights on fast mode here, so we can get to that discussion part, because I'd like to hear what your questions are. I'd like to hear what is it that you'd like to know more about what's come out here. You should be seeing a beautiful screen saying what's new in Sitecore 10 at this point. And I think when I looked at the release and I was looking through all the release notes and all the stuff from the product team, I saw kind of a theme of efficiency, particularly efficiency between marketing and IT. Like, what was the goal? It looked like we were trying to get these teams to work together and deliver at the speed each of them wants to work, trying to reduce that friction. And so I found that what we wanted to do here was, focus on time to market, usability, performance, a lot of those good things that we often, we talk about. But I think that what we saw in this release and was a lot of stuff that was targeted specifically at those areas. And because, I always love talking tech first, I want to get into kind of the tech team changes. Because really, if we look at it, I mean, it's been a while since we've had a big tech release like this. I'm thinking back to, like, it was probably Sitecore 7 before we had, like, that was the last time we had like a big, huge release. There was a lot of just tech stuff in it. And there were a lot of changes that happened. And I think we all have done Sitecore for a while, and there's a lot of options. You can build so many ways. Sometimes that flexibility is probably not, the bonus for some teams that others would have. But in this release, we added even more flexibility, mainly around feedback that we were hearing around how do we get container infrastructures. The community was really spearheading this and running it and trying to get that going. Headless development with big JSS, huge hit. A lot of people liked it. Some didn't particularly want to go and learn JavaScript. So how do we get that for .NET developers? People have been asking for Sitecore to run on ASP.NET Core for a while now too. And a lot of feedback we were hearing, there was a lot of debate in the community around serialization tooling. So how do we address kind of what's going on there and the feedback that we had? So one of the big things, obviously, Docker, Kubernetes, Sitecore provided image repositories, getting those delivery teams into that continuous delivery model, infrastructure as code deployments, trying to do better team onboarding. I think that was a big deal, and a lot of what people talk about in Sitecore 10 was getting that to be from Sitecore, having the ability to go faster and get started quicker. And that was all done as an additional choice on top of the existing options. And now on the ASP.NET Core front and headless, the new ASP.NET Core SDK really addresses some of that. So it gives you the ability to work like you did in JSS, but with .NET technology you want. And also it incorporates all that feedback that we got around JSS and how to, really customers and developers and partners that were working with it, enhancing. And now JSS and the ASP.NET Core SDK, they use the same headless services. So you kind of it's another client SDK on top of it. Another big piece was introducing Sitecore CLI and Sitecore Visual Studio tools. This gives us a way for individual team members to work the way they want with serialization and automate those content changes. Maybe it's between environments. Maybe you're automating just sharing amongst your team, but letting someone who wants to work in the command line do that. Someone who wants to work in the plugin, do that. So diving into containers, I think those of you who have gone into the containers know what the importance here is. But if you haven't been looking at it and you're wondering, I think if you've ever had to go and be a developer working on a virtual machine somewhere, you know how painful that is, how much it takes up on your hard drive. And doing a local installation and trying to switch between VHDs, it's not easy. The Docker-driven development model really helps with that. And it also allows you to start moving between environments pretty well. Your infrastructure flow starts getting better. You can start defining what your dependencies are. So we start seeing 4 major areas that I believe that we're going to address with this. Total cost of ownership. When you're looking at TCO, how do you reduce costs? And maybe it's your infrastructure bill is going to go down. Maybe it's just because you're getting your team being more efficient on bringing them on. Maybe it's because of the flow that you're doing to your ops team. All of this faster delivery kind of driving down how much it costs for you to do development. You also get a lot of things like, what requirements do I have for this particular version? I'm on 10.1, but I'm on 10.0 on this project. I'm on 10.2, like the 9.3, right? Having those dependencies of what Solr version do you need, what SQL Server version do you need, being able to define that for your team, share that, have everybody just get up and running, makes things a lot easier. You tear down, you go to your next project, you build up. It's going to make a lot of efficiencies there for the dev teams working. I also think we're going to see on the ops side a little bit of a change. In adopting Kubernetes, people are forced into doing a bit of a delivery mindset change to continuous delivery. But there's also all these new tools of monitoring and security that have become industry standard out there that monitor containers that you can use for applying security. And we can take advantage of that now, because now we're going to be able to be in that ecosystem. Now, ultimately, I think if you want to go to a continuous delivery model, it's not a tech problem. Going to containers is not going to solve that. It's a people problem. It's a DevOps is a culture issue, right? You got to get people wanting to work together, bringing the whole life cycle. But when we start adopting Docker in our development areas and then going to Kubernetes for our infrastructure automation, we're going to be seeing a lot of the workflow changing in organizations because the tools have been designed for working that way. So you're going to have to be thinking that way, and it's going to help those teams that are trying to transition into that model. So I think this is pretty huge. Now, the other thing is we've got not just containers as a new option, but this whole headless delivery piece, right? So we can start building an ASP.NET Core on the front end now. So that means that you're going to have teams doing a headless architecture, getting all that great feedback we had about JSS, and be able to now go and do a lightweight front end, which means you're going to be faster when you start building. So you can debug locally, you can make your changes locally, and not worry about recycling Sitecore all the time, right? You're just consuming, trying to work on your front end, build it out really fast. This is going to help with the team morale as well, either attracting people or just retaining people who want to stop working on an older ASP.NET and work on .NET Core. They're going to find something new that they can play around with, get excited about. A lot of teams also have started building other ASP.NET Core applications. Because of its headless approach, you can actually pull Sitecore in a more, when you want it type of approach, which allows a little bit better native integration into those ASP.NET Core applications. We're going to see that starting to pop up a little bit more too. Now, if I start combining this, so I'm a developer and I want to set up a development setup using containers and I want to work headless, it gets a lot easier to start creating these scale developer setups. I don't have to worry about it as much of like, how am I going to keep all these pieces working together? We can define those Docker files, compose it up, bring it up, and you get all of the basics things that you need for Sitecore. The one I'm showing here is an architecture for a simple XM type of build. This is what we're doing to build out the MVP site right now. And then we add in our headless layer. And this is where we're going to be doing all of our changes when we're building out our website. We're changing our ASP.NET Core front end, and we don't have to worry about all that Sitecore pieces behind it. We're just connecting to it. So this is letting us do really rapid recycles as we make changes. Another new piece that's in the architecture with Sitecore 10 that you're going to see out of the box with what we define is traffic as a reverse proxy. Some of you may have played around with it and noticed, IIS is acting weird and you can't get your containers up and you got to turn it off to make it work. That's because it's intercepting that traffic and trying to reroute over to where it should go, and IIS does, is intercepting on the same ports. But traffic is there and allows you to then work on your multiple projects, be able to know which containers need to be responded to. Makes things a little bit for you. If we switch to the serialization side of things for devs, what we're going to be looking at here is really, well, we've been calling it, the best of TDS and Unicorn, right? So it's focusing in on the content piece. So there's things that TDS does, and there's going to be some things that Unicorn does that are outside of that story. But for your ability to automate content, serialize content, share it with your teams, push it through environments, we get these two new options. And the first one being a command line interface. A lot of devs want to work at the command line. I'm not one of them, but when you do want to work on the command line, you want a tool that does that. And then also you've got Sitecore for Visual Studio for those who would rather work in their IDE, have a more graphical user interface for it. And the key here is they both do the same thing. They're built on top of each other. So that means within a team or even within the same developer, you can choose, I'm going to work on the CLI now, or I'm going to be in my IDE, work where you happen to be. So I may not want to use the CLI, although I'll admit, ever since I've started using it, I did get a little hooked on doing my pushes and publishing via the CLI. It seemed a little bit faster. So you can pick how you want to work at different times. And I think that's a big bonus for it. Now, one of the things that we don't highlight a lot, but there was a bunch of stuff that happened from a performance and monitoring perspective in this build. Whether it's around the change tracking in XDB and just making that work way faster, or having reporting that's working with being able to use lazy loading and caching and let you have tens of thousands of active personalizations and not seeing degradation, to like things like the session state stuff. When we worked on the session state reduction here as a team, they were able to really reduce and optimize the response time there. So all of these things are allowing you to either use less infrastructure for the same thing or be able to solve problems faster. Again, addressing that whole lower cost of the total cost of ownership, right? One of the ones that I thought was neat was the application map. So a lot of teams out there in using Azure wanted to use the application map to monitor their XConnect services and things like that. And with this, now we can finally do that. So I thought that was pretty cool from an ops perspective. Now, with a few minutes I got left, I want to just quickly run through some of the marketing features as well and content features. There's a lot that was done for tech delivery, but there are some features there too for the marketing teams. A lot of it focusing on how do we go faster to make changes? How does the team have more in the tools they're trying to use? So that meant making Horizon better, handle more use cases, whether it's multiple languages or being able to work on metadata, and also doing things like new rules and more layouts and working with Salesforce Marketing Cloud, that type of thing. How do we use the tools that we already have? And data privacy was another piece. A lot of folks saw in Sitecore 9, we had GDPR coming around the same time as 9.0, and we got a lot of tooling in there to really address a lot of regulations. But we're seeing that there's more and more that we can do. And in 10, we addressed some of this with forms and some of this also with consent management. We'll dive into those a little bit later. Now, the first one, which I thought was a pretty big win, is going back to the old personalization on a CMS only install, because this allows you to run a very, very lightweight infrastructure, still getting a little bit of personalization capability for people using whether it's session rules or device rules. So this is going to let teams start the personalization journey a little bit earlier before they invest in having XDB and XConnect and all the marketing automation, having all of that running too. So this is going to make it a little easier to get started into that world. Another piece I mentioned was Horizon. Now, multilingual multi-site was huge, being able to support that use case and get that going, including being able to switch over to an SXA site. Now, SXA does have a lot more integration in this version, but I think we're going to see over the course of the Sitecore 10 series a lot more. We're still having some scenarios of SXA that aren't fully supported in Horizon. So I think as we go through the 10 series, we're going to start seeing SXA and Horizon really tightly coupled and being able to be fully used for those scenarios. And part of getting there was how do we edit page metadata, this headless data, things like that. So being able to switch over to this kind of content view instead of the WYSIWYG view. So that was a really big change, and we've added some of the content can now be edited that way. And that's going to allow for more use cases where editors can kind of stay in Horizon and not have to like switch over to content editor or switch over to experience editor. And finally, we're talking Content Hub. We got to get that DAM in there. Before with Horizon, you had the media library stuff you could pick. We needed to be able to get people who were investing letting the marketing team have a little bit better flow. Again, staying within the tool they want to use. Now, on the Content Hub front, we're seeing people who want to model their content over in CMP, and they want that then to go out across all their channels. And then in that world, XP is just one of many channels. The web channels out there, but then they've got all kinds of other channels that they're trying to push to, whether it's print or email or some other tool that they're integrating with. So we needed to start defining more. There was a little bit of support in there, and we had to add more fields. Taxonomy was a big piece. And this is something we're going to keep investing in because we want to see that story where you can use as a marketing team, Content Hub as your central repository, start the creation workflow, getting everything defined, figuring out what that content is, and then letting each team then take it the rest of the way. So it gets into XP and the web team can take it to what it needs to be for the website or for the apps or whatever it is that XP is then driving. I mentioned privacy. Quickly on this, lots of stuff like GDPR, the new California privacy regulations, there's a whole bunch that's coming out here. Right to be forgotten, we had this in 9 with our XConnect stuff, and there was a way to get rid of forms data, but it wasn't as easy as it could be. So there's new APIs now available, so you can get things like redacting your submission values, deleting files that were uploaded by the visitor, XDB contacts, getting those associations removed. So then the marketing team still sees the reporting data, but it becomes anonymized. So I think that was a nice thing that was added on there. The other piece was consent management, which we've all seen all those pop-ups of like, please accept the cookies on this site so that you can get functionality, right? Everybody's kind of rolling their own on how to do that. From Sitecore side, we're like, how can we support this better, give a better infrastructure for it? So doing things like the ability to store the consent in XDB out of the box, having those there, and have sites be able to disable the tracker if those are not set for a user. So if a user has not consented, the site automatically can deactivate the tracker. And also making that site specific. So you can have some sites that operate one way, another site that operates and immediately deactivates based on consent. So this is going to get the teams to be able to have a better start to getting to the point that they need to be for whatever privacy regulations they're trying to meet. And one final piece that I want to talk to about Sitecore marketing automation. We've seen a lot of groups that are using Salesforce marketing automation, and we had this integration which kind of did like a batch connect over to it. And teams were finding they didn't have the real-time capability they needed. So we added a new marketing automation feature in Sitecore, which allows you to do real-time integration right into Journey Builder. So something happens on the Sitecore side, your marketing automation plan picks that up, and is configured with that action to go and immediately put that person over into a Journey Builder, pass the data over, allowing whoever's using Salesforce marketing automation to then respond in real time across all the channels they're using there. So it's a nice little use case that we can solve for teams that are kind of trying to make these tools work together. So that was a whirlwind, going through all that real quick, high level. But at this point, I'd really like to find out, what kind of questions do folks have? What do people want to know? And how can we help? So I think at this point, I don't see any raised hands, but Anders, do you want to run the moderation on this?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I don't see any raised hands either. Anyone has?
I think raised.
I've got a small question related to the Horizon interface, because we've seen now indeed that you can edit fields, and if you do it that way, you get a full-blown rich text editor, what you actually would expect. But in the WYSIWYG mode, you don't. And it's even impossible to just put a simple link to another page in your site in that editor, which makes it completely useless. So is there, well, maybe in a next update or something, will we get a full rich text editor in the WYSIWYG mode?
I don't know if it's in the next version, but what I am doing is taking down the note here so I can follow up with the product team and note that's definitely, that seems like it's misaligned, right? If you have one editing interface on the back content editing view and then a different one when you're WYSIWYG, there may be reasons for that from a user experience perspective that they're trying to go that way. But you should be able to accomplish the same thing, however it's provided, right? Whether it's a rich text editor or they just allow you to somehow copy paste in markup and it just does it for you. So I'll take that back to the product team and follow up, see what we can get done about that.
Okay, thanks.
So anyone else have questions for Jason?
Or critiques if you don't have questions. I'm cool with taking feedback too back to the team. So
well, I have one question. I've raised my hand for Jason. Well, Jason, what about the media library? The media library is well, we started off with the Sitecore 4 back in the 2000s, and the media library hasn't changed a lot. And now we have responsive websites, and we need to have pictures to adopt both the mobile experience and the desktop experience. So, what is your take on the media library?
I think my personal take on the media library right now is the media library is indeed, as you said, Kurt, under innovated within what comes out of the box in Sitecore. I think we've been doing a lot of innovation on that, especially through our acquisition of Style Labs, bringing in the Content Hub tool, the DAM features that are in there, the CMP workflow. If you're looking for where Sitecore is investing in media and media management, it's over there. I mean, there's you've got AI looking at that for content similarity, proper search stuff. You've got proper tagging. If you look at that tool, that is where we are investing for media. We think that is where we're going to go, and we are building on that model going forward. So I don't know what's going to happen completely down the road. It's too far to see. But right now, we do know that we have XP going one way, and then we've got the new path to SaaS going in a different way. And while we're innovating on both, I think it makes sense for us to, if we're going to invest in media management, to invest in the tool that does the media management for us. So I think for teams who are looking for that advanced media capabilities, they should be looking at what we have from Content Hub. So we're doing more and more integration where you can use that within XP directly. So you, instead of picking from the media library, you pick from your DAM. And then you can get a lot more functionality that way. So yeah, and this question seems familiar, Kurt. Did you ask me this on Twitter as well?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
And
I thought your name looked familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah. So DAM is really the way to go. If and there's a bunch of functionality in there. I really suggest taking a look at it and seeing how it can help you out from a media management perspective. And I think, if I'm not correct, I think actually is talking about Content Hub integration later today on this one, right?
Yes, yes.
That'd be a really cool session for you to see what's going on there, Kurt.
Yeah, but I don't think that Sitecore will offer me a damn light solution out of the box. I think I should pay for it. And if you look from it from both a user perspective and other perspective, then we might have a solution that doesn't fit the new area of CMSs. So just a head on that.
Yeah, I'm not in the sales team, so I don't know how all that licensing is going to work out with having whether teams that have certain licenses can get into Content Hub and how that works and whether they have the light versions or not. That obviously for you and your sales group to talk about what would work for you in that scenario. But I do know that at least from a tech perspective, that's the direction to go if that's the problem you want to solve. Okay, I see another raised hand, right, Anders?
Sumit?
No, I just wanted to add on to you, Justin, that we had done some bits in XXA. So within the last few releases, XXA compliant components are responsive, and it has its own ways of handling those requests. I just pasted that on on the chat.
Oh yeah, the responsive variants, right? Yeah. But I think that doesn't solve the, if I recall, that doesn't solve the media management part of it, right?
Yeah, it just solves the responsiveness. Where do you want to see that? And,
yeah. So yeah. Well, thank you, Jason. We are actually out of time already. It goes much quicker than, but yeah, highly appreciated that you could come by and.
Well, thank you for having me.
You're welcome anytime. Next time, maybe in person. Who knows? That would be great if.
Pandemic willing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, is it just me who can't? I can't stop myself laughing when you said "damn tool." It might just be me who.
I
never
think
get used
Chris
to
Williams has been getting in my head too much.
it.